Welcome to episode 1 of Keepin' It a Hundo with Matty Hundo. I'm your host, and episode 1 is titled CleanJohn. Make sure you download and subscribe to Keepin' It a Hundo on iTunes or on the podcast app. I'd also appreciate it if you share it with your friends on Instagram or Facebook or MySpace or Black Planet or whatever else the kids are doing these days. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Welcome to Keepin' It a Hundo. I'm your host, Matty Hundo, and my guest today is my old friend, John. John has been homeless and living on the streets of Miami for over 40 years. We're going to talk to John today about his rough upbringing in Wichita, Kansas, that included living in a group home for troubled boys on a ranch in Texas, several years at a state mental hospital in Kansas, and how he escaped and sought refuge in the trap houses of Overtown in Miami. Thanks for joining me today, John. Your story is one that should be heard.
Yeah, you know, my life is like really fascinating because when I remember my mother changing my diapers. That's how well my memory is. You know, I remember her putting me up in the kitchen, in the kitchen sink, and it had like two sinks, you know, right together, where you could take the faucet and you could switch it from this sink to this sink. She would set my butt in one sink and my knees propped up. My feet would be in the other sink, and I remember her cleaning me, and I remember her powdering my butt when she was finished, you know. And I mean, that's
I feel like I have a pretty good memory. And looking back, my memory doesn't start till I was about 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
You had to be younger than that unless you were wearing
Well,
diapers.
I was still wearing diapers, so I don't know, 2 years old.
Yeah.
I don't know if babies wear diapers at the age of 2, but
So
anyway.
what was your relationship like with your mom and your dad? What was home life like?
She was like really poor. She had a hard time feeding us, you know. I guess she lived off the county, you know, the rations or whatever they were given to her at that time. I mean, I'm just a baby. I don't know what it is. I remember one time I got hurt, you know. I was running in the house, and I tripped over 2 steps. And when I tripped, my chin hit this bedpost. She had a metal bed frame, and the posts were sawed off. Somebody sawed them off with a hacksaw, and my chin, it went up through my chin. And I got like 14 stitches in my chin, you know, and I was only like 2 years old then.
Tell me about your hand.
Me and my brother, he was 2 years older than me. We used to go over to these other kids' place, you know, like a block away, and we would throw things in this water pump. There was no water pump in a back patio, a fenced-in back patio. And we went over there one day, and I went over and I walked over to the switch to turn the water pump on, but I remember hearing a noise. I turned the switch back off, and I went over to the pump, and I started rolling the pulley, the belt on the water pump with my hand, and I told my brother, I said, go over now, flip it on. And when he did, it came on, and my finger got caught in the belt, and it was just like squashed it, you know. I remember going to the hospital, and I sit in the waiting room waiting to see the doctor for hours. And finally, they sewed it back on, and they waited like a month later, and I went back to the hospital. They unwrapped it, and it was like rotten, you know. And I remember seeing the doctor come into the room with a knife in his hand, and when I grabbed my finger, you know, to jerk away from it, because I knew he was going to cut it off, it squashed in my hand. It came off in my hand, you know. So I went through like 4 or 5 different operations. They had to scrape it, gangrene. Yeah, it had rotted. It was gone. So I remember going through 4 or 5 different operations. I remember them putting a mask over me, because we're talking about like the 50s, the late 50s.
They had the gas probably to
ether.
put you to sleep.
Yeah, they put me to sleep with ether, you know, because they didn't have injections back then.
Yeah.
And I remember them putting that mask over my head, and I couldn't breathe right, you know. I was suffocating. And I remember seeing this little machine next to me. It had all these curves and angles and stuff on it. And every time I wake up after the operation, I thought that I was inside that machine. You know, that was another world, you know. but I remember.
Tell me what your relationship, your parents' relationship was like.
I didn't have a father. My father was an alcoholic. He'd always come home, fight, and then leave, and we wouldn't see him for a month, maybe, I don't know, longer. But anyway, I remember.
So it's pretty much your mom, and then she had.
Yeah, she was an alcoholic too. You know, both of them were alcoholics. And I remember one day when they were fighting, and my father was hitting my mother, and it really made me mad. And I walked up and just wham, I clobbered him. And you know, a little kid so small, so short, that when I clobbered him, I hit him right in the groins, and he doubled over. And I heard him, oh! And I'll never forget that, you know.
So what was school like for you? I know you said you had a tough time growing up in school.
Yeah, I did. When I remember going to kindergarten. Yeah, I remember that too. My memory's like really unbelievable. It even amazes me, you know. I remember going to kindergarten, and then they put me in first grade, and I remember I couldn't concentrate or understand what the teacher was telling me. You know, I had a learning problem.
And you knew pretty early on that you didn't feel like you were like the other kids.
Right.
You knew you were different.
Right. I couldn't understand, you know, what I was supposed to be, the teacher was supposed to be teaching me. And so I never concentrated on what she was saying. I just always daydreamed. And I actually flunked the first grade. Yeah, I did. I flunked the first grade. I had to go back through the first grade again. So that set me off a year. I never completed the sixth grade. I dropped out when I was in sixth grade. So I was like a...
School definitely wasn't for you.
No.
So
I remember...
When you were a kid, did you think about what you wanted to be when you grow up? Did you want to be a doctor? Did you want to be a football player? Did you want to be a truck driver? Did you have any ambitions? Did you have goals?
Yeah, I wanted to play music, you know.
You wanted to be a musician?
Yeah. I wanted to be a drummer.
What kind of music did you listen to when you were a kid?
Rock and roll. Yeah, but we're talking about the 50s. I started listening to rock and roll in the 50s, you know. When I was... like I say, after I got my finger cut off, you know, I kept getting in trouble with my brother. My brother knew how to. He always had a bike, you know. He was like 5 years old, and he always had a bike. I was 3, and I remember he kept stealing bicycles. At the age of 3, my mother, I remember her putting me and my brother up for adoption. Everything was legal and everything, and we were in this children's home, you know. And we're everything legally was done to where we would never go back to our mother again. And my brother kept telling me this, said, we're never going to see mother again, and let's run away.
So at what age? At what age?
3. I was 3, he was 5.
At that age, you got sent away.
We were in a children's home, taken away from our mother because she put us up legally for adoption. So we were in the children's home waiting to be adopted.
So did you ever get adopted?
No. Matter of fact, when I was in this children's home, my brother kept asking me, let's run away, you know. I'll get us back to our mother, but I kept telling him, no, I can't do that. I didn't really know what was going on. I'm only a 3-year-old kid. How am I supposed to understand what's happening? I'm supposed to be the one look and learn, not say what's going on, you know.
And you were born in 1956.
Yeah, and I got COPD, so it bothers my lungs, you know.
Yeah, apologize for the coughing.
Yeah, but anyway, I got in my first fight in this children's home with this kid. You know, he fattened my lip or blooded my nose or something. I can't remember which one. But anyway, I finally told my brothers, okay, let's run away. So we did. We walked away from the children's home. And I remember my brother going up and knocking on this door and said something to these people, whoever is at the door. And he came out, and we got in his car, and he drove us home. And I remember a half a block from where my mother lived, he dropped us off. And I couldn't never figure out why didn't he just take us to the door. And I figured out that my brother, he's pretty smart for being 5 years old, didn't want the guys to talk to or be talking with our mother because then he might know that we had run away from this children's home. So he ducked and dodged him finding that out. So what we did, we walked back, and our mother was surprised when she seen us stand at the door. She took us in. And the officials, when they finally found out we escaped from the children's home, I guess the officials come and knocked on the door of our mother's house, but she hid us. She didn't want to give us up, but she was too poor to feed us or support us. So
and you guys wanted to be with your mother?
Yeah, absolutely. And
even though she wasn't the best mom, she had her issues.
The only issues that my mother had is she was too poor to feed us or support us, and she cared about us. There were any other issues? There were none.
Okay.
Only thing is she couldn't have supported us, and she wanted to. She did it out of love, and it's not an easy thing to accept if you love your kids to give them up so they'll have a better life, But we didn't know what was going on. But anyway, our mother, the officials come out, knocked on the door, and said we had run away, that your kids came up missing from this children's home. Do you know where they are? And she said, no, she hid us from them, Excuse me. But anyway, they couldn't find us. Of course, we were at home. Our mother was hiding us from them, And finally, they made a news bulletin on TV, newscast on the radio and everything, looking for these two kids. They're missing and everything. If anybody sees them, or to notify the authorities and stuff, And anyway, finally they made a news bulletin on TV. Said if we can find these kids, we'll send them back to their mother.
So you talked a lot about your relationship with your brother. You looked up to your brother. He was kind of your protector.
Yeah, well, he was. My mother had five kids. Yeah, I was the youngest, and she had the first kid she had. She was 17, and she was 42 when she had me. But from my father, my father and my mother only had me and my brother. The other three kids came from other fathers. Okay.
What's your relationship like as you grew up with your brother? Did it remain close?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Very definitely. But.
And where's your brother now?
He's deceased. He died the same year my mother did, in 1987. The authorities finally released us when we were up for adoption, and we were back with our mother, okay? But by the time I got 8 years old, this teacher came to my mother's house and talked with my mother about sending us away to this boys' ranch. It's like 36 miles out in the country from Amarillo, Texas, And so we got all that done legally, and we got on a plane, a TWA.
So do you think, you said you guys were pretty poor. Who do you think paid for this stuff? Do you think it was maybe the government? It was state funded?
I have no idea.
Because buying plane tickets wasn't cheap back then.
We were out there for quite a while, about 4 or 5 years, I'd say.
Tell me some of the good stuff you remember about being out there. Playing sports, meeting
The food
friends.
was good. The food was like, I've never ate anything as good as out there. They had everything for a person growing up.
You say they had a rodeo out there?
Yeah, I rode a rodeo. I rode what they call junior calves, I played in basketball tournaments, not football, but volleyball tournaments, wrestling tournaments. I remember my dorm parent, he would always beat me with the belt, These were like real cowboys, rednecks, Cowboy boots, big wide belts, with the cowboy buckle,
Sure.
And he would always, every little thing he could find, he would beat me with it, take it back in the office. He had an office that adjoined to his apartment, He'd take me in the office and beat me with the belt, all the time. He did all kinds of things. They had one guy in each room that would run the rest of the kids in the room. He would be like the boss, and we'd have to have everything tip-top folded, all our clothes folded in our lockers, and everything had to be just right down the line, or the dorm parent would spank us, But this dorm parent, he went a little beyond spanking. He would beat us,
You think he was hitting the other kids too?
Oh yeah, but I don't know about the other kids. He spanked me more than any other kid I know. Every day it seems like I get a spanking from him, But what I mean spanking is my butt would be black. I have found a football in the bush. I seen it when I walked by the bush. I seen a football. So I got the football out. I carried it to the cafeteria. See, they had a big long hallway in front with doors going into the cafeteria. and they had coat racks and shelves up there where you could put all your stuff while you're eating and stuff. So I put the football up onto the shelf, and they had like sections that each person would always put their stuff in that same section, you know. So I had my little section, and that's where I put football. Well, the dorm parent seen that football there. He knew that I kept wanting a football because for some reason, somewhere they got money to save for us, you know. Each inmate, each child there would have an account in his name, but he couldn't draw money out of it because the dorm parent had control over all that. You know, I kept telling him I want a football, you know. And he took me in the office. I remember he called me while I was out there working, waiting table. He called me to the office. He says, "Where'd you get the football?" You know, insinuating that I stole it, you know. I told him, I said, it was in the bush over there on the way to work. He says, he kept calling me a liar, you know, and he kept spanking me, you know. And I never broke down and told him I stole it because I never did steal it, you know. And finally, he set me on his knee and he kept pinching the back of my legs with his fingers until it hurt and it bleeding. And I remember by the time he was finished, I never would admit to stealing that football until finally I told him I did, you know, because my legs was just so black and blue all the way, my whole butt all the way down to my knees. The back of my leg was black and blue and bleeding and stuff.
That's the only way he would stop, is if you admitted to doing it, even if you didn't.
Yeah. I was scared because he kept threatening me and stuff. I can't remember exactly what he was telling me, but whatever it was, I remember it was scaring me, you know. Yeah. So finally I told him I stole the ball. I remember after that happened, I went and I showed the chaplain my back of my legs and stuff, and he got the man in trouble for it, you know. And I don't know what happened to him, but anyway, they had sent me back to my mother. My brother stayed there, but they sent me all the way back to Wichita, Kansas.
And you're how old at this point?
I was 13, just turned 13.
So you're 13, back in Wichita.
With my mother, yeah.
And you really haven't been to school very much.
No.
And
matter of fact, they started me back up in school because I went through special education when I was in this ranch. And I remember I was in the 7th grade now, you know, and I kept getting in trouble and they suspended me from school indefinitely. So I didn't have to go back to school, you know. And I love that because now I could just go out and do whatever I wanted to do, you know.
Stealing bikes.
Well, no, I didn't steal bikes then, but I remember when I was a kid, we stole so many. My brother taught me how to ride a bike, and he kept teaching me how to steal bikes, you know, because back in the mid-50s, people never locked their bike. And I remember the police, we stole so many bikes and got caught so many times. Police finally bought us a bike, but they didn't buy me one. They bought my brother a bike, and they gave me one of those little, you put one foot on it with the handlebars, you push with the other foot, a scooter, you know. I said, damn, I wanted a bike like my brother got. But anyway.
So what was the first time you got in trouble with the police? The bikes? And then, but they never arrested you.
When they sent me back from the boys' ranch and I got suspended from school, I remember seeing my mother drink, you know, and I started smoking because I kept stealing cigarettes from my mother, you know. Finally, she says, "Don't steal my cigarettes, just get your own." And I remember, she drinking beer. I never drank any beer, but I stole a 6-pack of Coors beer from the Safeway grocery store in Kansas, and I drank it, and I got drunk. I threw up and everything. And I didn't really like it, you know, but I did it again. I sold it again to see try to find out what was good about drinking beer, you know, and I got caught, and they took me to jail. And, excuse me, this jail was like 8 floors up in the air. My first time being in jail, I got claustrophobia, you know. Every night about 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, it would hit me. I'd be in this jail. I'd be climbing the bars. I'd be so high up, my head would be squashed against the ceiling. And one night, the jailer, we called him jailers, you know, big brass key and all that. He walked around, seen me up there. He says, "You all right?" I says, "Yeah, I think so." I says, "I don't know what's wrong. Every night I get this bad feeling." He says, "Oh, I know what it is." That's claustrophobia. He says, I'll talk to the officer in the daytime, see if he'll let you out to feed the sandwich to the other juveniles, you know. But what good did that help, you know? Still, every night, even though I got a little room to move around, every night the phobia would still hit me, you know. I'd be up there climbing the bars. I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. So I said, to hell with it. And I told the rest of the juveniles, you know, through the opening in the bars, I says, listen, tomorrow when I come out and feed sandwiches, I'm going to lock the guard up in the cell. I says, anybody who wants to go with me can go, you know. And sure enough, they had these old doors, you know. They would roll, they would slide open and slide shut, you know. And there was a control panel. They had these switches that you pull out and it would flip up. And then you'd roll this big wheel and it would open the door. Well, if you pull the switch on the door you want to open, and if you didn't roll the door all the way back, it wouldn't safety lock. So you could grab the door actually with your hand and pull it closed, you know. So sure enough, next day when they let me out, I gave all the sandwiches out. And when I got finished doing that, I came back around, and the jailer always left the control box open in case I needed to take another juvenile out for some reason, you know. Maybe the lawyer wanted to see him or something, you know. But anyway, I walked up to the control stand. I started popping the safety locks open. Pop, 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 pop. And I started rolling the doors open. The jailer would come out. He says, what are you doing? I says, I'm letting everybody out. And I walked up to him. I says, I'm locking you up. And I grabbed him and I started dragging him down the catwalk to the front of the door. And I threw him in the cell. And then I pulled the door closed on him, you know. And then I went back to the control panel. I safety locked this door. And then I opened up the other 4 cells, you know.
You did this by yourself?
Yeah. And the jailer there was a fire escape door that the jailer had a key to. He always had to have a key to it because it was some kind of fire regulation, you know. I mean, what's going to catch on fire? The whole place is steel and concrete, sure. You know. I mean, they wouldn't let us smoke or nothing. Anyway, 4 or 5 of us got broomsticks and we went around on the catwalk. We threatened to kill him if he didn't give us the key, and he gave us the keys. So we went out the fire escape floor to the stairwell, and there was like 8 flights of stairs. So you're talking about 16 stairs we had to go down. And when we got down to the bottom, we opened the door. There they were, the whole goon squad, about 14 officers waiting for us. What happened is one of the other juveniles that was in the cell came out and went to the jailer's office, and he pushed the panic button.
Take your time.
Yeah, and that was when we were on our way down the stairs, you know, 8 stories up, you know. He pushed the panic button, so the goon squad was waiting for us.
So he snitched on you guys.
Yeah, he snitched on us. Yeah,
Snitches get stitches, John.
Well, anyway, he did, not back then. They took and locked us all up in this dark room with only a hole in the floor, no bed or nothing. I mean, there was like 8 of us in there.
So what, you're supposed to go to the bathroom in the hole?
Yeah, that's what we had to do. Yeah, back in those days, that's what happened. You know, we're talking about in 69, 70. Yeah. Well, anyway, they charged every one of us with kidnapping, attempted murder, battery on a Leo, attempted escape, and a whole lot of other stuff. I mean, we were facing like 60 years, you know.
This is the Wichita City Jail.
Yeah. County jail.
Jail.
Yeah, county jail. But anyway, what happened was the state actually found me not guilty by reason of insanity because claustrophobia is a temporary state of mental disorder, you know. And they sent me to the state hospital. I'm 13. And when I got there, they started pumping me full of tranquilizers and stuff. I mean, every time I stand up, I pass out. So I had to escape. I tried to run away, you know. And I got caught. They locked me up in this 6x4 concrete room with this foam rubber mattress, an old green army blanket, and a 2-gallon bucket to crap in. That was my bathroom. Wow. If I had to crap, I'd be in the bucket. If I had to do it at 8 o'clock in the morning, I had to live with the smell until 10 o'clock at night because that's the only time, every night, 10 o'clock, I could come out, empty the bucket. Like 5 steps from there was a bathroom. I could empty it in and flush the toilet.
Did you try to train yourself to go later in the day so you wouldn't have to smell it all day?
Well,
Back then, you didn't plan that out.
No. I mean, I'm only 13. I don't know. When I had to go, I had to go. So, hey, I wasn't smelling nobody else's, only mine.
All right.
Thank God, you know. But anyway, this room was like, you couldn't see, there was no windows. It was in the middle of this big brick building. It was two-story brick building. You know, they had all these nuts up there. I mean, they acted like really weird. I've seen some weird things, you know, people. And they let me out like 2 weeks after my first time trying to run away, you know. They let me out. And I remember them giving me a shot once a week, and they called it time-release Perlixin, you know. And they give me several other different kinds of drugs, you know. But every time I stand up, I pass out, and I couldn't stand it. It was like really messing with my head. So I had to get away from this place. I ran away again, and finally, I made it to the highway, and I was hitchhiking, you know. And this truck driver stopped and gave me a ride. He said,
what was the name of the place where the state hospital was?
It was Larned State Hospital. It was Hospital. There was like a little town 3 miles from there that was called Larned, Kansas. That's where the state hospital got the name, Larned.
So you escaped again. You escaped from pretty much every place anyone's ever locked you in.
Yeah.
You escaped?
Yeah, we escaped from the children's home when we were 3 years old, yeah. And the truck driver said he was going to Wichita, and I said, well, the state hospital is like 180 miles from Wichita, and that's where my mother lived. And he dropped me off at my mother's house. But I was still 13. I was still 13, you know, when I had run away and made it back to my mother's place. And I remember smoking my first joint with my brother, you know. And I had got sick when I came down. I started slurred speech, blurred vision, started drooling. I drank a cup of water. I threw it up right away, and then I started going in convulsions. So my mother had to take me to the emergency room. And when she took me to the emergency room, they found out that I was a runaway from the state hospital. State hospital came 180 miles within an hour and got me and took me back. Well, I was unconscious when they took me back. I remember when I woke up, I was strapped to a bed, 5 points, both arms, both legs, and my waist. And the doctor was checking my vital signs, and he made a statement to me. He said, John, we didn't know you were taking heroin. What the hell's heroin? What's he talking about? Let alone I just smoked my first joint, you know? But anyway, they locked me back up in this 6x4 concrete room until I was 17 years old. And there was no windows in that room. You couldn't talk to anybody. It was like total silence. I didn't see a blade of grass or daylight from the age of 13 to 17 years old. Finally, and it wasn't until later on in my life that I figured out exactly what happened, is they were doing illegal drugs testing on me, morphine drugs, and that shot they were giving me once a week was not time-release Perlixin. How can you give a shot and make it time-release? You know, I mean, you can do time-release with a pill, but not in a shot. They locked me back up in this room, and they left me in that room because they were scared that I might have knew something about what they were doing and might tell somebody, or either the hospital found out when my mother took me to the emergency room. But anyway, evidently nobody knew about it, so they kept me locked up in that room until 17. They took me off of it, you know, so it was out of my system and everything. But anyway, they finally let me out.
But you were going through withdrawals. That's why you were sick when you went back home.
Yeah, when they come and got me.
How long do you think they were shooting you with heroin?
Maybe 8 months or so.
And that was once a week, once a day?
Once a week, yeah.
Once a week?
Yeah.
For 8 months.
Yeah. But that's why I never knew what, but it was like a very uncomfortable sickness, you know, and I lost consciousness when I went to convulsions. My mother took me to the emergency room. But anyway, when I turned 17, they finally let me out of seclusion. That's what they called it, a 6x4 concrete room. And no magazines, nothing, you know. I mean, total silence. Just the room, the mattress, the blanket, and the bucket. To give you an idea of what time this happened was when Western Union first came out with this, what they call Questionnaire. They called it Questionnaire. You didn't need ID to receive money from people who wanted to send you money. All you needed was like a secret code. Well, I had my little finger cut off when I was 4 years old. And a light bulb lit up in my head. I was sitting in the day room with all these other nuts. you know. And when I see that commercial, boom, a light bulb lit up in my head. I said, well, if I could get to the town 3 miles away, call my mother, she could send money Western Union and use my little finger for the code, you know, and I could buy a bus ticket and make it back home, you know. I wouldn't get caught because they had security who patrolled all the roads and highways and stuff around the hospital, you know. So if one of the nuts escaped, they'd find them. Well, sure enough, I said, I have to get away from all these drugs they're giving me. And I escaped. And I went through the fields. I never went down the roads, the dirt roads, or the highway to get to this town 3 miles away. I went through fields, climbed over barbed wire fences, walked through cows, around cows, horses, and all kinds of shit, you know. But finally I made it to this town, and I called my mother, you know. And I told her, I says, look, Western Union has a new thing called Questionnaire. You can send me some money, I can get a bus ticket, and I'll make it back home. And she did. She wired me money, and I went, I picked it up, and I bought a bus ticket, and I made it back to Wichita. I was 17 years old, you know. And I figured, well, I need to go to away from here because they're going to find me, you know. I didn't want to go back to state hospital. And I figured, well, Florida, I heard Miami's warm all year round. I could go there and sleep outside, you know.
For somebody with a lack of resources,
Yeah.
you grew up, you know, poor,
Yeah.
uneducated.
Yeah.
You're a very resourceful guy.
I came here. I came to Miami when I was 17 years old, running away from the state hospital, you know. And I stayed homeless all those years, you know.
You got to Miami in 1973?
74.
74.
Yeah, and I came to Tobacco Road. And I never left the neighborhood because I liked Tobacco Road. Everybody from the bar, it's the oldest bar in Miami. They were like cool, you know. They smoked weed, did all their little things. I did too. I did drugs, you know, back in my young days. But, yeah, I used to drive a car. I got a driver's license. I drove a car for somebody, you know, and he was a booster, what they call a booster. He stole out of shopping centers, you know, and then sold the clothes. And every time he paid me to take him to each store, he'd steal something and sell it. He'd give me some money.
So you were the wheelman.
I was the wheelman,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. And I kept seeing him shooting up this drug. I didn't know anything about it or what it was. It was cocaine's what he's shooting up. And curiosity got the best of me. Like they say, curiosity killed the cat. Well, it sure did me too. Because I told him, I says, why don't you do me one time? I want to see what it's like, you know? And he did. He shot me up one time, and let me tell you something. I got so high, I says, I'm hooked, line and sinker, off just one hit, you know?
And you guys would shoot up and then go do burglaries or whatnot?
No, it wasn't a burglary. He'd steal out the coats and clothes and stuff, you know, expensive jackets and shit.
But didn't you eventually
and then he had a fence.
Step it up a little bit to Coral Gables cars and things like that?
Yeah, but after I lost my car and stuff, you know, and then I was hooked on coke. I was shooting coke myself. And I used to start going over to Coral Gables, the rich neighborhood, and I would break into these conversion vans and steal out the electronics, you know, and sell them, you know. And I don't feel good about it, you know. And it's been over 25, almost 30 years since I've done that, you know. And that's how I used to support my habit. But anyway, I finally got off of drugs, you know. Here I am, 60 years old, and I finally made it off drugs. Doctor told me, he says, if you keep smoking, you ain't going to live another year. And he told me, he says, you got COPD, you know, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. That's from smoking crack, smoking cigarettes, smoking weed, and all that, you know.
Let's go back to when you were shooting up. You would go over to Overtown. That's when you started going there.
Yeah, I used to go to Overtown. I'd buy these dime caps, you know. Well, anyway, Tobacco Road was nothing. It was in a rich neighborhood, you know. And I remember all these people, rich folks that would come there, you know, to drink and stuff, was always asking me, where can I get some coke? Where can I get some coke? Well, there wasn't no coke in that neighborhood, not then. And I used to say, well, I know where to get it, but you have to trust me. And I built the reputation as being trustworthy, and I was actually one of the coke men at Tobacco Road that when somebody needed it, I was the one they'd come to, and they give me $100. They want five bags. I charge them 4 bags. I give them 4 bags, which a dime. They had dime bags, and I buy a dime bag, and it would cost them $25 for the bag. They give me $100, so I bring them back 4 dime bags, and then they pay me like $50 for going to get it. So. I was support. You do the math. I was making out pretty good, And
did these people know you were homeless?
No.
They just thought you were one of the guys hanging out.
Yeah, they just thought I was the local dope boy.
Yep.
And hey, they were all happy. They kept coming back and everything. I never ripped.
They were
off.
Too scared to go over to Overtown.
Of course.
They didn't have the connections.
And there was nobody around there that sold it, so I was like the winner. I was in it, And I made a lot of money, and then I just blew it all, just doing it up, smoking it up, shooting it up. And
did you have a specific spot you used to go, or you used to go to different?
Well, I went to different traps, that's what they call it. Every dope boy in Overtown selling dope had their own little spot, Nobody else could sell dope there. And then 2 blocks away be another spot, You
were telling me that back in the 70s or 80s when you were shooting up, they called them shooting galleries over there.
Yeah, they call them shooting galleries, yeah.
But yeah, now they're trap houses.
I remember one time I was in the shooting gallery and I just got out of jail, and I figured, well, instead of sticking myself twice, I'll just put 2 dimes in it, mix it up once, draw it all up, shoot half of it, and then when I come down off that buzz, shoot the other half. But no, it don't work like that. Because when you shoot that first half, you get the feeling so good, fuck it. You just slam the rest of it, and that's what I remember hitting my head on the back of the bathtub, and they carried me across the railroad tracks and threw me over in the bush because they thought I thought I overdosed and was going to die, but.
They don't want that blood on their hands.
Yeah, they didn't want to have to get caught. Do
you know how lucky you are to be alive right now?
Oh yeah, I'm lucky, very lucky. And I got hit by a bus, 2012. State attorney owned this bus that hit me, and they don't want to give me nothing for it. They say, oh well, because my lawyer filed a lawsuit too late, I'm only going to get $5,000 out of the deal, but the state don't even want to give me that. And the judge actually, in the long run, would have dismissed it, and I wouldn't have got a penny if I didn't take $5,000,
I spoke to a couple of attorney friends of mine, and they had the same question that I was wondering. When you got hit, you went to the hospital and got admitted?
Yeah.
Did you get drug tested?
I wasn't on drugs. I had got picked up for panhandling. I was in jail all night that night until the next morning.
In your system.
Well, even if I had it in my blood, don't mean that I was high on it.
But did they test you? Do you think
No, they didn't.
Things?
No,
okay,
they didn't. Even if they would have, it still wouldn't have mattered because I was in jail all night. Until I went to court the next morning to see the judge, and he dismissed it, and let me out.
So how many times do you think you were in Miami-Dade County Jail?
I can't remember. I've been to prison 5 times.
5 bids in state prison?
Yeah.
What were those for?
Burglary.
All burglary?
Breaking in a van, yeah. One of them was battery on a Leo.
What's a Leo? Battery on a Leo, what's that?
Battery on a police officer.
You call him a Leo?
They call them Leos. Law enforcement officer.
Oh, I see.
LEO.
Okay.
Yeah, law enforcement officer.
Yeah.
That could be a security officer too,
Yep.
But anyway, I never jumped on this officer. I went to Publix grocery store one day. I wasn't looking too good, looking pretty homeless.
Yep.
And this off-duty officer walked up to me. All he had on was a black jumper. That's it. He says, "You can't go in the store." I says, "What do you mean I can't go in the store?" He says, "They don't want you people in here." He says, I come in here every day and buy food. Well, you can't go in. I said, "Let me speak to the supervisor." He says, "Look, asshole, I am the supervisor." I said, "Fuck you." I turned around and walked off. And he followed behind me until I got got around the corner of the store, and then he pepper sprayed the shit out of me. Emptied a whole can of pepper spray on my face. I remember when he had me handcuffed, or when I was rubbing my eyes, he sprayed my hands, so when I rubbed my eyes, it would just get in my eyes. He pulled the back of my pants up and sprayed it all down in my ass and everything, the pepper spray.
I've been sprayed. I know it hurts.
Yeah,
they last almost 24 hours.
Oh, man, he emptied the whole can on me. He took me to the emergency room and everything.
So this was over at the same Publix that I've seen you at for years? Brickell Publix?
Yeah.
And how long
Not
ago
that
did
one,
that
but
happen?
the one over on 13th Street.
Okay, I know that one.
Brickell neighborhood still, you know.
What? How long ago was that incident?
That was in 2002.
Okay.
Yeah. 2002 is when that happened. Anyway, I stayed in jail 11 months, and after my arraignment, I never went back to see the judge for like 8-9 months. I never seen a judge. I just stayed in the room. They kept setting it off without calling me out to see the judge. You know, they made me an offer when I was first there to give me 60 days. I just turned it down because I told them no. I said I didn't do it. The officer said I spit on him. I didn't spit on him. I never did spit on him. Oh yeah, they said I spit on him. He calls that battery. You know. But anyway, they were just going to ride me out for 2 or 3 more years. I would have sit in that jail fighting the case.
What's the longest bid you did in prison?
3.5.
3.5.
Yeah.
Where was that?
In Putnam County.
Putnam County.
Yeah.
That
was for burglary.
Nothing crazy in there?
No, I never did nothing.
Kept to yourself?
I never did nothing like robbery or hurt anybody. It was just burglary. And then the one battery on a Leo, that was a lie. And I had to take a guilty plea on that in order to get out. I had spent, remember, 11 months fighting the case in the jail. And they said, well, we'll give you a year and a day in prison if you want to plead guilty to it. Well, that meant that I would go to the state South Florida Reception Center. I would get my prison number, you know, and I'd be released because I had all the time in the county jail already on a year and a day. So they let me out. And I was still smoking crack for a long time. And then finally when the doctor told me, says, if you don't stop smoking cigarettes or whatever you're smoking, you're going to die within a year. So I quit. Quit everything. Quit cigarettes. Quit smoking weed, crack's cocaine. That's all it is, you know. It's
so you were shooting up for, what, 10 years, 15 years?
Quite a few years, yeah.
And then you stopped doing that. What made you stop doing that?
Because I couldn't hit a vein.
Ran out of veins. They all collapsed.
Right. Yeah.
And then you move on to the next one.
Yeah. So
in the 80s smoking. When crack got big and cheap.
And yeah, it was like in the 80s, huh?
Sometime in the 80s.
Let me tell you something. Crack is the same as freebase. The authorities gave it the name crack to make it look worse than freebase, you know? Yeah.
You've mentioned your brother, and you've told me you lost your brother and your mother in the same year. Very difficult year for you.
Oh, yeah, 1987, yeah. That's the year I was released from prison in 87. Yeah, my first time.
Wow. So your first time in prison, you get out, and your mother and brother...
Yeah, well, I went to prison like in 85 or so.
How did your brother die? He was in the streets like you?
No. He kept messing with hookers out there, you know, and he caught AIDS from one of them.
In Kansas?
In Houston, Texas.
In Houston.
Yeah. I remember one time he told me, he says, I'm going to die soon, I got AIDS, and then I started crying, and he said, I'm just kidding you and stuff. And then later on I found out that he was dying from AIDS, that he wasn't kidding.
Do you think he said that because he saw how upset you were?
Yeah, he seen me crying.
Yeah.
And so then he told me that he was just kidding me.
Did you know what AIDS were at the time?
I knew it was a bad disease that was starting to go around, you know? That was like when it first came out.
Did you hear about people in the streets in Miami dying from it that maybe you knew from doing drugs.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I did.
something that's very common. In
I did.
drug
My brother
users.
caught it from hookers, so I never messed with the hookers when I was doing my drugs.
Yeah.
Never. No. And then I never shared needles, so I never got no diseases.
Well, what about your own love life? You've had girlfriends in the past.
Oh yeah, I had my fill.
Never been married.
One time I was married, but it was like just a quick thing, 6 months.
But you went down to the courthouse and...
Yeah, I got a divorce.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about your last girlfriend.
Oh, that'd been a long time ago. She was just another crackhead,
And you felt like she was just in it for the crack.
Right.
You kept her high and she
Yeah.
stayed with you.
Yeah.
And if you couldn't keep her high...
I fell for her, and then she kept using me, so finally I got rid of her.
You ever see her around anymore?
No. Uh-huh.
In your days on the street, did you have people you considered friends, other homeless people, or did you kind of keep to yourself?
Yeah, I used to go and steal from the rich people, like I said, back in the days when I was still shooting coke. And all these people that were homeless, living on the street, smoking, getting high and stuff, they kept following me all around because I made a lot of money, doing what I did. And I had a heart, I kept giving them drugs, dope, passing it out. Sometimes I felt like I was the Pied Piper,
What I find interesting is a lot of people discuss other homeless people I've spoken to or heard interviews with. They mention how ending up on the streets was rock bottom for them. I feel like for you it was almost a relief to get freedom.
It was.
And
you want to know what really happened is being locked up in that room. You got to understand that when a kid becomes an adolescent, that's when his mind is starting to be shaped and formed. All I could do was pace back and forth and create my own world in there, to keep my sanity. I mean, I never seen daylight or a blade of grass from the age of 13 to the age of 17. I never spoke to nobody. I never had no friends. I never had schooling. I had nothing. Just like when you pick that seashell up and you hold it to your ear and it goes, shh. That's all it was,
So you learned how to cope being alone, ways to
Yeah,
entertain yourself.
I became a good actor and a singer because I'd pace back and forth, create my own world. Many times I would play the role as a judge. I would play the role as my mom. I would play the role as the prosecutor, and I would convict those motherfuckers. I'd hang them by the nuts for what they were doing to me, My mind grew to want freedom more than anything in this world, to get out of that room. So that's why I guess I came to Florida so I could sleep outside all year round and just be free,
When did you realize and accept the fact that you were going to live as a homeless man? Do you remember the moment that you kind of just said, this life, this is what my life is going to be?
Yeah. When I left and got away from that hospital and came down here.
But you never saw having a home with a white picket fence and a wife and kids as an option for you?
No.
Why is that?
Because I wanted to be free. It's only a natural instinct. When anybody has whatever he wants, he's happy. What else does he want?
So what brings you joy in life? What are the things when you were homeless that brought you joy?
Getting another hit.
That was the most important thing every day.
For a long time, yeah. From one hit to the next.
What were some of the nicest gifts you ever received when you were on the street? As far as, did anybody ever hand you $100 bills?
This limo was up there, and it was dark tinted windows. The driver had the window rolled down a little bit. I walked past the limo. As soon as I got past it with my cup, somebody called me, and I turned and looked, and the back window on the limo was rolled down. And he says, "Come here." And there's two black guys in the back seat, and then the driver up front, the chauffeur. And this guy pulled his wallet out, and he took two $100 bills out. He took out a 20, the first guy, and he stuck it in my cup. And then the black guy sitting next to him pulled his wallet out. And when he pulled his out, he took out two $100 bills and put them in my cup. I was so happy. Man, I was so happy. I went inside McDonald's, had me the most expensive order on the menu. And I flashed at them because they see me every
McRib?
day. They see me everything. They see me out there every day panhandling change. I come in, I show them what their guys just give me, you know?
So that leads me to my next question. What was it like being one of the only homeless white men in Miami? Because you don't see a lot of that around here.
Yeah, it was either Spanish or blacks, you know?
So do you feel like it was tougher for you?
I never, let me tell you something. I always stayed to myself. I never got to know the other people. Did what I could do to get rid of them if they were, like, trying to squeeze into my life, But
now I have a story for you.
Yeah.
About 5 years ago, I was coming home one night, walking through Brickell.
Yeah.
The listeners probably don't know, but I've known John for 7 or 8 years now. We live in the same neighborhood. He lives, well, when I say live, he was sleeping on the street in my neighborhood as long as I've lived here, which is almost 8 years now. And one night I was walking home through Brickell, and I saw a commotion going on behind Tobacco Road, and John was in a fight with what appeared to me another homeless man, and John was just trying to protect his territory where he lived, and was trying to take a piss. Yeah. And the guy had come over. I don't know if he was trying to peep at John while he was doing his business or what, but I heard John telling him, leave me alone, stop looking at my dick. Heard all types of stuff. So I came over and told the guy to get lost. This is John's spot, and you probably don't remember. Do you blame anybody for your situation?
If I was to blame anybody for the situation, it'd have to be that state hospital.
Fair enough. Do you have any regrets for things you've done in life?
Yeah, I do. I regret doing what I did, just starting out, stealing from the rich people over in Coral Gables to support my habit. And I still feel bad about that. Even every day that I'm alive now, I still feel bad about that, But that, I quit many years ago. It's been like 25 years.
That's great. And you've managed to eat and get high for that many years.
Yeah.
Now, it's been almost a year since...
It's been over a year. I've been completely clean.
Over a year, so I turned John on to the podcast Dirty John.
Yeah.
The name of this episode is going to be Clean John. I don't know if he knows that yet. But this is the Clean John episode.
You got Dirty John, now we got Clean John.
Clean and sober, and he's actually found temporary home
at
the
Camilla's house. It's a homeless shelter. When I got hit by the bus in 2012, it crippled me, It did a lot of damage to me physically. So right now, I hadn't been able to get disability because I never had no ID. Matter of fact, for 10 years, I tried to get identification. And since I'm from out of state, it was like an impossible situation. And I called the homeless hotline. This is 10 years after I've been trying to get it, So I applied for disability. I'm trying to get that now. And the lawsuit, I filed a lawsuit against the state attorney's office. They're the ones who owned the bus that hit me. The only thing that I'm going to be able to get is $5,000. I tried to get more. They said, no, we're not going to do it. The judge is going to dismiss the case eventually because my lawyer waited too long to file it.
I'm hoping you can take this $5,000 and turn it into an apartment for yourself.
Well, I'm going to, actually what I have in mind is to just put that in the bank and keep it there.
Well, if you can stay at Camilla's house.
If I can stay at the Camilla's house until I start disability, if they give it to me,
You might be able to afford an apartment with disability alone.
Yeah, I use that to and just keep the $5 in there.
So what I like is you have life goals now.
Yeah.
And they're achievable.
Yeah.
You've put yourself in a better situation. You've been in jail, prison, mental hospitals.
Adoption.
Children's
homes.
Protective services.
Child
protective services.
What do you call it? Foster homes.
Were you ever scared?
I went through a lot of things that was scary. I mean, too many things I can't even begin to go there with it, Every time I went in Overtown to buy drugs, I was scared. scared they're going to rob you. You ain't fixing to give up your money. You're an addict. You got to have your drug, so they got to hurt you to get your money. You're going to make them go to that point,
One of the nicest gifts anybody ever gave you. You had possession, and you still have possession, of a Louis Vuitton blanket.
Oh, yeah.
How does a guy like yourself end up with a Louis Vuitton blanket?
I was sleeping, and this lady and her husband evidently pulled up right where I was sleeping, stopped, and the lady got out. She covered me up. I was asleep, and I didn't even know it until I felt something on me. And I looked up, and this lady's covering me up with this blanket. And I told her, I says, thank you, bless your heart. And I never knew what this blanket was. I figured it was just another old blanket, this somebody just didn't need and covered me up with it. But anyway,
you had no idea how much it cost.
No, I never heard of Louis Vuitton until after that. But anyway, for 2 weeks, I laid out there on the sidewalk with my blanket that I would lay on, it was like a comforter that I used for a mattress, and I cover up with the blanket. Well, I would fold it up and leave it right there on the sidewalk. If I had to go on my bike to the store to get something to eat, I would leave the blanket there. And, for 2 weeks, nobody ever took that blanket.
John recently found Facebook, Instagram.
Yeah.
He has a cell phone.
Yeah.
And he's like a caveman.
I got clean after a while. I went and got the phone,
He's like a caveman who discovered fire. He's
right.
really enjoying technology.
Yeah. I posted a picture of it on Facebook. I said, this is my house. My only vice is money. Because it's been like almost a year now that I was clean. Some girl responded back, says, that's a fancy house you got there. She says, I like that blanket, She says, that's an expensive blanket. And I says, oh, yeah? She says, yeah, that's a Louis Vuitton. I says, well, I didn't know anything about Louis Vuitton. And I said, what? It's like looking like any old regular blanket. I looked it up on Google, and it showed me an identical picture of that same blanket, $1,500. I said, what? And I left that thing out there on the sidewalk for 2 weeks, and nobody ever stole that blanket? I'll never get rid of that blanket. And let me tell you something. Every night I cover up with that blanket. I don't want to get out from under it the next morning. That thing is so comfortable. It's unreal.
If you were on death row and you could pick one meal to have, what would be your final meal?
When I was at this boys' ranch, they used to have a breakfast. And it consisted of peanut butter that was warmed up. And they mixed Caro syrup with it to make it real sweet. They would give you a platter of buttered toast. And they would give you a bowl of scrambled eggs, all right? And we used to take the buttered toast, and we put the scrambled eggs on top of the toast, and we pour that warm peanut butter over the eggs. And that's what I would have right there. That would be my last meal.
I think that's an example of one of those meals that reminds you of your, of a happy time or a happy place. Maybe.
It was, like I said before, they fed you too good at that ranch. They did feed you good. The only bad thing about it was getting beat every day by the dorm parents. Yeah, that's the way I made my breakfast, and it was good. Yeah, it was good.
Do you have any advice for people out there that may be going through some of the things that you went through?
You know what I learned? I laid out on the sidewalk with all my addictions, addicted to cigarettes, addicted to crack, smoking weed and all that. And I laid out there on the sidewalk, and I stopped. And I did it without any help. I did it without a crutch. I did it without a program. And I learned that if you use a program, the program ain't going to stand on your 2 feet. You're going to have to learn sometime to stand on your own 2 feet by yourself, because the program ain't going to do it for you. And I learned that if you stand by yourself and you quit all your vices, you build a solid foundation, you're never going to go back to drugs or whatever it is. Like, I'm never going to go back. I'll never smoke. I'll never get high again in my life. I found other highs, like electronics. I'm like into electronics now. I love it.
I love seeing it.
I got a phone, a Bluetooth speaker I put in the basket on my bike, and I got I got a stereo system just like the cars got now. I can boom down the road like everyone else, you know.
I don't think John realizes this. I haven't really told him this, but out of all the years I've known him, I've been trying to help him as much as I can, bringing him clothes and bringing him food.
Oh yeah, he's brought me so. This man has given me so much. I can't even begin to verbally describe it. You know, the shoes he's given me.
John's got some of my Jordans on now.
Yeah, huh?
He lost a pair at the laundromat. I was a little disappointed. But
yeah, I got him on. I got his jeans on too. Yeah, I do.
But the reason why I bring that up is out of everything I've given you, everything you've given me by seeing the improvement in your life and seeing you get better and get healthy and you're not on drugs anymore.
No.
You're not on the street.
No.
That makes me feel so good. I'm really proud of you.
I only have one worry now is the Camilla's house. Their regulation is that a homeless person can stay there for the length of 3 months. I'm just worried about maybe Social Security turning me down and me not getting disability. I have to sleep on the street again. But if it comes down to that, I'm strong though. I'll never go back to drugs or anything.
Last question for you, buddy.
Yeah.
Do you realize how resilient you are?
I don't know the meaning of resilient.
I guess we'll sign off on that one.
All right. Okay.
And continue inspiring me and other people, John. Thank you. Thanks for listening to episode 1 of Keepin' It a Hundo with Matty Hundo. Please make sure you download and subscribe to Keepin' It a Hundo. You can find episodes of Keepin' It a Hundo on the podcast app or on iTunes. You can also find me on Instagram at Matty Hundo. I'll be posting pictures with each of my guests. Next week I'll be in Jersey City talking to Big East Hoops legend Terry DeHare. Thanks for listening.